Hello everyone, this is Sofia Smallstorm back in the month of March with another podcast for you. And today I have quite a privilege to talk to David Icke. So you'll be able to hear his answers to some of the questions I'm going to ask. I've been reading his book. He was kind enough to send me a copy of his newest book, Phantom Self. David is pretty famous. He's been doing this for a very, very long time. And by this, I mean plumbing the depths of the matrix and restructuring it through his many, many books into something that is very comprehensible, a picture that he gives in his own very unique way. If some of you have seen him talk, he can go on for 8 or 9 hours. It really is fascinating and astonishing. And so I know this interview is going to be similar to that, lively. David he's a literal font of, I'll just say, expression that comes from a very singular person as I have come to know him and his work. So welcome, David. How are you?
Thank you. That's quite a build-up. I think I'll leave now.
David, other people have built you up way more than that. You know that. So this book, Phantom Self, and I really want people to read it because it's not like his other books. I've got a couple of David's other books. This is really different. It's wholly different. And so, David, can you explain a little bit about this concept of Phantom Self, the reason you titled the book Phantom Self?
Yeah, well, it was 26 years ago this month, on the 31st of this month, 26 years ago, that I walked into a psychic's front room and was told I was going to go out on this journey, this world stage, and reveal great secrets. And it's been a process of, there's two things gone on. First of all, from that moment, my life became an amazing synchronistic procession of people, experiences, information, books, documents, whatever, that were putting together the puzzle pieces to try to understand what this world really is. And secondly, it was my own personal experience, much of it has been very challenging, to get me to a point where I could break out of what I call the program enough to comprehend and access a point of observing this world that was beyond the programmed perceptions of this world. And as the years have passed, or appeared to, let us get into time, the various themes have become very clear. In the early days, it was information. It was this dot, that dot, the other dot, and then you go through a process where you start to connect the dots and make the picture, and then you go through another process where you start to realize which dots are merely interesting and which dots are really crucial. And eventually, it became clear that of course, there is a force hidden from humanity that is behind the world that humanity sees and the events that humanity sees, which appear to be, to most people, random, but in fact are anything but. And there was is a plan, an agenda for total human control. So as I began to understand this, and I got more and more evidence and information about it, and then I went through a big, if you like, further awakening process myself, and not long before and even during the writing of Phantom Self. And like I said earlier, I started to see more and more which dots were interesting and which dots were crucial to the real understanding. And the theme that started to appear very clearly is the whole foundation of this conspiracy from the hidden to manipulate and dictate the scene is based on manipulating the perceptions of people and to disconnect the conscious mind, that which perceives the world through the five senses, to disconnect that from infinite self. Because where I'm coming from is that infinite self is a state of being aware. Because we constantly experience the realm of form, we perceive life and awareness in various states of form. We link the two. I can understand that because they appear to be linked in the world of the seen. But if you just take away form, take away what you can see, and look at this reality from the point and self from the point of view that we are an expression of awareness, a state of being aware, then the world of the seen takes on a completely different perspective. It is a place for awareness to experience. The world of the seen, the body, the brain, all this stuff is not the self. It is the experience of the real self, which is awareness. And when I've looked at the way society is structured, as it's been structured virtually throughout known human history, just more and more profound and extreme now, it's all about enticing and hijacking the five senses to pull in humanity's point of observation into the five senses. So this is where we get the process of, can I touch it, taste it, hear it, see it? Okay, it exists then. I can't. Well, it can't exist then. This mentality, which of course is to such a large extent the foundation of the belief system of what we call mainstream science, much of it. And once you pull a point of attention into the five senses, so that's basically how it is perceiving and interacting with reality, then you've taken a state of being infinitely aware, or at least a more expanded awareness, and you've so focused its attention that all it can see is what it thinks it can see. The other levels of self, all the levels of intuitive knowing, of instinct, of this level of I know rather than I'm thinking and trying to work it out, that's all lost. And there's a video on the internet I saw many years ago of people bouncing a basketball around, and the video at the start says something like, count how many times the ball is passed between whatever. And so what people then do is they focus their attention on the ball, and they're following the ball. That's their focus. And when you focus like that on a ball or on a dot, you lose peripheral vision because you're so focused on that. And at the end of this video, it says, did you see the gorilla? And the great majority of people, so this study said, do not see the gorilla. And what they do then is they play the video back, and suddenly, right in the middle, while people were watching, this gorilla walks in the middle of the players, looks around and walks off. And that is so fantastically symbolic of what I'm talking about in terms of a focus of attention on five sense reality, and you lose peripheral vision to see what's beyond that. And of course, once you're isolated in five sense reality, almost so in totality, in terms of your self-identity and your perception of the world, then the only place that you can look to get a fix on, and information to give you a fix on who you are, where you are, and the nature of reality, is in that five sense world that you can only perceive. and coming back from that world, that information comes from sources like the education system, the mainstream media, peer pressure who've been through the same process, etc. And this focus of attention in the five senses, where we self-identify, and self-identification is so important to the level of awareness that we're accessing, that self-identity with our name, our life history, our education history, our income bracket, our race, our religion, our background, our color, so focuses attention that we're only seeing the basketball and we're not seeing the gorilla. And when you and that combination of what I call label consciousness is what I term in the book phantom self. It's the self-identity, not with the true self awareness, but with phantom self, a construct made up of labels that we've accepted is us and who we are. And what the conspiracy must do is hold us in that phantom self focus of attention, which is, and self-identity, which is what it is, at the expense of the greater self. Because once you expand your awareness beyond the program, beyond the phantom, into a much greater spectrum of awareness, you see what you cannot see in phantom self.
Okay, so David, I use the term the three-dimensional world, which is the container for the experience of life. And you're telling us how our five senses register what we can see, hear, touch, smell, and so forth. But that awareness exists beyond that three-dimensional world. It's a part of us that lives outside of the three dimensions. And this is what they're closing off in us, right?
Yes, exactly. Because we're dealing with a force in the hidden that understands, at least on the relevant levels to itself, how we interact with reality and what reality in this human world really is. And this is why, and you see, when I started on this journey, I started to see in the very early days, back in 1990-91, that there were other explanations for life and reality than I'd come across before. Because when I was growing up, first of all, I rejected religion. From a very early age. I also rejected the idea that of much of mainstream science, which this world is all there is, life's a bitch and then you die. I rejected that as well. But I was getting on with my life. I was a professional soccer player. I then became a journalist. I then moved into television. I became a national spokesman for the British Green Party. And in you know, if you like, in human terms, I'd lived a very expansive life. And then I have this experience, and I start to come across all this information and start to get all these kind of insights into reality beyond anything that I'd seen before. And my first question, right back nearly 26 years ago, was, why on earth have I not seen this before? Why isn't this taught in the schools? Why isn't this on the television? And of course, what happens then as you move along the process of uncovering, you realize there's a very good reason why that's not happening, because that which is controlling all that does not want it to happen, because the whole foundation of human control is this disconnection. It is this manipulated focus of attention on a pea-size identification of self instead of infinite self having that experience. And so over the centuries before what we call the modern world, religion, of course, was massively playing this role of little me, keeping people in little me, keeping people in a state of I am small and I have to look to my betters. And you know, Sophia, when you think about it, religion, it was another, and the way religion still works today is another version of this disconnection for this reason. Religions, and I'm talking about the mainstream religions, although I don't get involved in any religion. I think anything it has connotations and it has structure, and I think that's all part of phantom self. Anyway, but the mainstream religions, what have they said throughout their time? And what do they say in relation to, I mean, the Christian Jesus? Only through me can you get to, in effect, connection with the divine, the greater. Only through this man in this frock, called a priest or a bishop or an imam or a rabbi, can you make that connection. In other words, the very symbol of the priest in mainstream religion is to stand between the self-identity of the human self and what is perceived to be the greater divine infinite self. And so what we have today is we have things like a focus on celebrity, a focus on smartphones, a focus on whatever is playing the part of the priest now. That middleman between the incarnate self and the infinite self. And this is a constant theme wherever you look, this disconnection. I remember I was in Australia, in Canberra, the capital. Horrible energy, Canberra, because it's been structured much like the center of Washington, D.C., along occult esoteric lines to manipulate energy. Anyway, there's this place in part of this esoteric geometrical system, which is kind of opposite the Parliament building, along a long straight road between the Parliament building. And at the bottom, they have this war memorial. And when you go into this big war memorial, which is a building, not just a plaque or something, when you see the people who've contributed to it, it's like a who's who of the Australian elite. And then you go in, and there's this one part of it which is incredibly symbolic. It's the tomb of the unknown or unnamed soldier. And you've got the tomb on the floor. And then there's four like massive, almost like pillars, but they're flat, like four flat parts of the wall going up to the ceiling. And on each of these walls, these four walls around the tomb, is painted. There's like a woman sailor, there's a male soldier, and so on, painted on the wall. And going out of the top of their heads is this white beam of light going out into infinity, basically, and sitting just above their heads in a position that says, we are guarding this beam of light, are these gargoyle, non-human kind of entities. I mean, it's bizarre. You think this is a war memorial to people who died in the wars, the Australians, and you look at it and you think that is so symbolic of this positioning to stop the infinite self influencing the incarnate self. And, as we've chatted privately before, this whole transhumanism agenda is part of extending that to go beyond the phantom self, to use technology to do and impose this disconnection.
So, David, I want to ask you, what took you into that psychic's office to begin with back then?
Crikey, that's a heck of a story. I'll make it as short as I can. I was a television presenter with the BBC. I was becoming very disillusioned with the media. I was sickened by the way it worked and the vacuous nature of it. And how people were so focused on career instead of the actual, what they were doing in terms of information. We talk about news and stuff. They used to have a saying at the BBC. They get so confused they stab each other in the chest, instead of the back. So I was really kind of becoming disillusioned with that whole world and that vacuous world. But what I started to happen in early would have been late late night. Well, no, early 1989. Yeah, that's what it would be. Yeah, early 1989. I started to feel that when I was in a room alone, I wasn't alone. There was something there, and although I've always been open to worlds beyond this world, even as a kid, it just made perfect sense to me. I mean, what do you mean this is the only world, and humans are the only form of life? Don't be daft. Always seemed crazy to me. Anyway, as the year moved on, this presence, if you like, got more and more powerful, more and more tangible, until by the end of 1989, going into 1990, it had become so. It was about this time, actually, in 1990, in the March, that I felt this presence so tangible that I was in a hotel room. Fully enough, I'm going to stay in that hotel soon when I speak in London. And I sat on the side of the bed. I'd just been working for the BBC, and this presence in the room was so powerful and so there that I said, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall. And then a few days later, I was just a few minutes walk from where I'm sitting now, with my who was then a little boy, Gareth, now very much an adult, long time ago. In fact, like I say, 26 years ago this month, and we were going to have some lunch in a cafe. But when we got there, it was full, so we were going to walk off somewhere else. We were on the seafront at the time. But somebody stopped me to ask me about football, and I started chatting with them. And then I realised, Gareth wasn't there anymore, but I knew where he was. He was in a bookshop right next to me, a newspaper shop. So I walked into the newspaper shop, and there was Gareth reading one of the books. And I said to him, "Come on, Gaz, we'll go in the town and get some lunch." And as I turned to move, my feet wouldn't move. And I was engulfed in something which I didn't understand, but I do understand now. It was an electromagnetic field of some kind, and I can't move my feet, and there's this kind of humming type energy around me, vibrating, and it wasn't a voice, but it was a very strong, like, thought form passed through my mind, which said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." So I'm stood there in complete bewilderment, in a daze, wondering what on earth's going on. And I started walking towards the books. But suddenly my feet were free, and I could walk. And I was more bewildered because I knew this newsagent bookshop very well. And the only books they sold were romantic novels, basically, by people like Barbara Cartland and others. But when I got over there, I looked at the books, and in among the romantic novels was just one, and it had a woman's face on the front, and I picked it up because it was different to the others, and it was called Mind to Mind by a lady called Betty Shine. Now, I'd never heard of Betty Shine at the time, and I turned it over to read the blurb, and I saw the word psychic. And I read the blurb, and this was a book about her experiences as a professional psychic. So I bought the book, took it home, read it in 24 hours. And what I felt was, if I go to see her, I wonder if she would pick up what this presence is I've been feeling around me for a year. So I contacted her, went to see her the first time. What I told her was that I had arthritis, true, and maybe a hands-on healing, which she also did, might help. I told her nothing about the presence. I told her nothing about anything, just that hands-on healing. So I went along, first time, hands-on healing, very nice chat, went away. Went back, second time, nice chat, hands-on healing, went away, came back. Third and fourth times, I only saw her 4 times. Third and fourth times was life transforming, it turned out, because on the third occasion, I'm sitting on this bench, medical type bench, and she's working on my left knee. And I suddenly felt this like spider's web on my face. which I now know was, again, an electromagnetic field. Didn't know then, of course. But what struck me is I'd read in her book that she said when other levels of reality, entities, whatever you want to call them, are trying to lock into you, you sometimes feel a spider's web on your face. And of course, it makes sense because they're locking in to make an electromagnetic connection to you. And I said nothing to Betty Shine. I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, I read about this in her book. And suddenly, about 10 or 15 seconds later, she launches her head back and she says, my God, I've got to close my eyes for this one. This is powerful. At which point she started telling me. The first thing she said was, funnily enough, although she knew nothing about my experience in the hotel, she said, they're telling me that you wanted them to contact you, but the time wasn't right. Then went on to say I was going to go out on the world stage and reveal great secrets. I would face enormous opposition, but quote, they would always be there to protect me, and a load of things that happened in that, and then the fourth time, all of which have happened or are happening. And from that moment, my life kind of changed. The BBC suddenly didn't renew my contract about 2 months later. There was no reason why they shouldn't, but they didn't, and therefore suddenly I'm free to pursue this. And information started coming to me, people started coming to me, and the synchronicity of life, and I just went on this journey, which has handed me first of all, puzzle pieces of the five sense level of the manipulation, then into the non-human level of it, then into the nature of reality level of it, and so it's gone on. And what you need to, one of the things that was said to me in those early psychic connections was no need for arduous seeking. You only have to follow the clues. And to be honest, that's what that was so perfectly true. All I'm doing is following the clues, which the language and process of life is putting before me. My job is to have a mind open enough to go with it instead of my phantom self rejecting it because it's so different to the norm. And what I then went through, because like I said earlier, my life in the last 26 years has been on one side, uncovering and putting information together. But on the other side, it's been my own personal journey of deprogramming to allow more and more of my infinite awareness in. And one of the, what happened is that eventually, I was well known in Britain because I was on the national television till the BBC let me go. And so when it got into the mainstream media, what was happening to me, it became a really big thing. And I went on a primetime chat show. In fact, where I'm speaking in London, where I'm staying at that hotel in June, is actually the theatre where that chat show took place. And it was a life-changing chat show because after that, I was subjected in Britain to the most historic levels of mass, almost hysterical ridicule. And, what it felt like was that my, if you like, journey that I just started out on after the Betty Shine experience was over before it started, because I couldn't walk down any street in Britain, and I'm talking literally without being laughed at. I couldn't go into a pub for years without mass ridicule. Comedian only had to say my name on television and he got a laugh. No joke necessary. And it seemed like it was over before it started. But what was happening is that it was just beginning, because that mass, I didn't know what was coming, but some level of me did. That mass ridicule cleared me out of the biggest block to free expression and free thought and free statements of view. And that is the fear of what other people think. Life so often gives us our greatest gifts, brilliantly disguised as our worst nightmare. and I was going through my worst nightmare. But as a result of that incredible level of ridicule, I let go of the fear of what other people thought. And so when this information moved out of five sense manipulation alone into the non-human level of it, into the nature of reality, and into the illusory nature of reality, because I'd been cleared out of that fear of what other people thought of me, I could communicate that without any mental gymnastics saying, well, hold on a minute, I feel this is true, but I can't say it. I mean, what are people going to say? I'd lost it. And I'd lost that concern. And so when I look at my life, it's sort of, and anyone else on these journeys, in the same way, would look at their life and they would see, yes, I've been led to information, but I've also been led to experience, which is getting me in a more a state where these layers of programming can be unraveled, so that I'm in a better state to communicate that information. And not only that, to access greater levels and greater depths of information, because you're no longer being imprisoned by the program and all the assumptions of the program that are put in is from cradle to grave.
So that's all very, very fascinating. And it's great that you've lived this and you've kind of been that was almost like a rebirth that you had through all the ridicule. And so you are responding to the zigzag trail of clues or breadcrumbs that's being thrown in front of you by something that appears to be working with you, I guess we could say. And you are now delivering insights and a dot connection and an interpretation to us, to audiences, to readers of your books. And people are learning from that. I mean, that's a service that you're giving. So I want to ask you, I am assuming that you're encouraging others to do exactly what you have done, namely to step out of the phantom self and be open to these, well, I don't know, they're messages or bits and pieces of happenings, and to try to reconstruct their lives in this extremely new, much bigger way.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a number of things to say to that. First of all, just going on from what I've just said, it might be worth including that in those early days, I was bumping into psychics, all over the place. Having gone to Betty Shine, and she was the first one I'd ever met. Suddenly I was into 3 or 4, and in not looking for them, but them dropping into my life, and they were all kind of giving me information, not knowing what the others had said, that was along this same theme. And one of the common themes was that there was coming, or there was in the process of coming, a vibrational information change. I call it information change now, but a vibrational frequency change, an energetic change that was going to wake humanity up from its coma. There were 2 parts of it. First of all, that where humanity was going to start to open its mind to things that it would have rejected before, that people who were more awake were going to be affected by this change first, and then even people at that time who were seriously asleep were going to start to be affected by it. And the other effect, I was told, of this energetic change was that these were the words of one message to me, that all that has been hidden was going to be revealed, basically. And when you think that this was happening to me in the early months of around the spring of 1990, and there was absolutely no evidence of any of this, and now you see the extraordinary number of people compared with then who are reassessing their perceptions of self, their self-identity, the way they see the world, reality, and world events, then it is extraordinary. And because of what I was told this energetic change would do, I gave it the name The Truth Vibrations, which was the name of the first book I wrote in something of a daze during 1990, trying to understand what was happening to me. So the good news is that there is an energetic change, an information vibrational change, which is teasing away at the slumber frequency, the phantom self frequencies, to help people in the process of awakening to their true self. And it is awakening in the sense that this is the other point of the question. We do not have to seek enlightenment. That is the great myth, I would suggest. We are enlightened. We are infinite awareness having an experience. What we need to do to reconnect a conscious connection to that level of awareness is not to find it. It's already there. It's to remove the layers of programming and perception programming that are holding us in effect, a frequency prison of perception that is shutting out, like a firewalled computer, that influence of the greater self. So when we talk about awakening, what we're really talking about is deprogramming from our perceptions of everything. And when I look at the alternative media, I mean, it's fantastic that it's emerged. I've watched it emerge over the last 26 years. There virtually was no alternative media then. And it's great. And you know, round of applause to everyone that is involved. But I look at the alternative media and I still see vast swathes of it are in a state of phantom self reality while looking at the world in a slightly different way, so they can see how some of the dots connect, whereas people deeper in phantom self reality would not see those connections. But they're still not looking at the world from a perspective that's beyond the program. And therefore, if you are entrapped, as I would see it, they would see it otherwise. But if you are entrapped in a belief system of some religion, or a belief system in the scientific mainstream, or a political belief system, or a nationalistic belief system, whatever, then your focus of attention is still in the phantom self realm. And when you're looking for solutions to the problems you are uncovering and the manipulation you're uncovering, all you can see is 5 sense answers, because to you the 5 sense world is where everything is at. So it's very difficult from that perspective, Sofia, to see solutions apart from stockpiling weapons and fighting the enemy. And you know, if you go down that road, well, the quote enemy has state-of-the-art technology and state-of-the-art weaponry. You know, so it can seem desperate. It can seem impossible, the odds that are being faced. But if you can expand your perception of reality beyond the program into the realms of pure awareness, you then see that this world is simply an expression of a state of awareness. This world collectively reflects the phantom self perception of everything. And thus, it's a state of limitation. It's a state of little me. It's a state of I'm limited and I'm little me. Therefore, I have to look to my betters to tell me what to think, to run the world for me, to do all the things that I obviously do not have the capacity to do. You look in the mirror and you see the reflection and you think that's me and that's the entirety of me. So all you can do again is think limitation. I can't. And of course, that's where this force wants humanity to be, because then it's a piece of cake to manipulate and control literally billions of people. But if you realize that as you expand your awareness and your sense of reality, then you can go into those realms where this world is manifested from. In simple terms, if you don't like a movie, then it's no good standing on the movie theater stage shouting at the movie and hurling abuse at the movie, because it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how many placards you walk around with demanding change in the movie. It's not going to change, because it's a movie. It's a projection on a screen. It's not where it's coming from. You've got to get to the source, the projector, and you've got to change the real. And that comes not from the world that we see. It comes from the world that we don't see. So it's just as this world is manipulated and directed from the unseen into the seen, so the way to turn this around has to come from the unseen into the seen, because the seen just does what the unseen has told it to do. Because our reality is in effect like a Wi-Fi field or fields, and symbolically and in many ways literally. And we are decoding information from those fields, just like the computer in front of me decodes the Wi-Fi internet, if I had it, onto the screen as a collective reality. A collective reality, the World Wide Web, that can be accessed, the same reality, can be accessed anywhere in the world if you have a log-on to get onto that collective reality. And you can put on the screen in Sydney, Australia, what someone's putting on the screen in New York, or you can put something very different on the screen to what someone else is doing, just as we live our lives in that way. And so we are decoding that information field into a reality, which I would suggest is simply a holographic version of the World Wide Web. And if you are, because my contention is that this universe is actually a quantum computer version of a computer game, in the most simplest way of explaining it. And the body, the biological computer, I call it, which again is energetic in its base form, is interacting with this quantum computer universe, which is interactive. We take information from the fields and turn that into a collective reality we think is physical but isn't. But we also post into those fields our own perceptions, our own state of being, and thus change the field as the field affects us. And if you are in a state of focus in the five senses, then that state of highly concentrated focus will mean that you can only access that range of the quantum universe. Thus, what you're interacting with, and thus what you can manifest and what you can understand, is a fraction of what it would be and can be if you expanded your awareness. So a much greater level of your conscious self is interacting with the field. Now you're seeing things and understanding things and getting insights that the five senses alone would never get. And what happens, and this is, of course, is what's happened throughout history, is phantom self, which is perceiving that tiny band of possibility and interaction, looks at people that are accessing a wider band of interaction. And because they're perceiving things in a completely different way, They're the ones throughout history, still now, who have been ridiculed, who have been burned at the stake, who have been condemned as dangerous and locked away, because what we call normal, this is a very important point, I would suggest, what we call normal has become equated with sanity. What has become known as normal is equated with how things are, when all it is, normal, is what you normally experience. And so a normal interaction of phantom self is within a tiny band of this interactive universe. And thus its normal is what that interaction manifests. Whereas if you expand your awareness, then what you're interacting with gives you a completely different level of normal. It's like one of the chapters in Phantom Self is called The Paranormal is Normal. Once you expand your awareness, you realize what is called paranormal. And the reason it's called paranormal is because it's outside the normal accessed by Phantom Self, i.e. esoteric things, psychic things, ghostly things, and all the things that go with it. Whereas when you interact with a greater level of this field, and in the end go beyond the field altogether into other realms of reality and insight beyond this so-called universe itself, then you start to realize that what Phantom Self calls paranormal is actually perfectly normal, perfectly logical, and simply explainable. And so this is what the awakening is. And what we need to do, I would suggest, I'm not telling anyone what to do, it's just a suggestion, is to get a blank sheet of paper, symbolically or literally, and say, okay, these are my beliefs. This is how I see reality. First of all, where did this come from? Where did this belief come from? Where did this view come from? Where did this perception come from? And if people are honest, they will invariably, almost whatever that perception, belief, and sense of reality is, they will chart it and track it back to some expression of this program, some expression of this system. It will be what their parents said. It will be something the education system told them, what science told them, what doctors told them, whatever. And then say, next stage, okay, that's where it came from. Okay, now instead of me accepting those beliefs, views, they're now going to stand up to scrutiny. They're now going to have to earn their place in my perceptions. They're going to have to earn their place on this piece of paper and not just go there just because it's the norm. And then let information and insight be the guide to how you perceive, and not just downloaded beliefs from the system, because it can be so easy to just come out with things, and then people say, well, where did you get that from? And they say, oh, no, everybody knows that. Well, no, I don't know that because I don't think it's right. So where did you get it from? And very quickly they're lost about where they got it from. It was just, well, that's how it is, isn't it? Well, actually, maybe it's not. Why do you think it's how it is? And again, it's come from the system in some form. It's like the Nazis used to say, in effect, the greatest form of reality program is repetition. When you keep being told from cradle to grave through parents, education system, and scientists and media and what have you, the same thing, and all the peers around you, peer pressure is telling you the same thing because they've been through the same system, then suddenly, purely by repetition, you get a view of how things are. But when you break it down, where it's come from, oh yeah, well, the scientist said it. Well, where's he got it from? Oh, I heard it I read it in the newspaper. Well, where did they get it from? They got it from the scientists, right? It's like what we have is this system of what I call repeaters. If you look at scientists, they're repeating the song sheet, apart from the renegade ones that are really proper scientists who are really in search of the truth, whatever it is. Most scientists are repeating what the song sheet view is of mainstream science, the scientific establishment, about whatever they're talking about. What are doctors doing? They're repeating what they learned at medical school and what the pharmaceutical companies are telling them. You look at journalists; they're just repeating what government says, repeating what doctors say, repeating what scientists say. It's all repeating, repeating, repeating. And if we say, well, okay, what are you repeating? Where's the source of this information you keep repeating? You'll go back to the system, which is a download, systematic download. That's what education's there for in its current form. That gives you your belief system for life, which helps to construct phantom self.
Well, David, now that you've taken a pause, I want to ask you this. So you were fortunate, we could say, in that something external to you and very powerful was surrounding you and caught your attention. And as you've been describing this matrix, this system that we live in, with so many people plugged into it for their livelihood, who've perhaps invested a lot of money in their schooling and training, these are all very strong cords or wires that bind a lot of us into the system and make us a part of it, a solid part of it. So in your case, the door closed. The BBC did not renew your contract. You were out there twisting in the wind. You had the advantage of having this powerful force get your attention, even to root you in that news shop and get you over to that book and introduce you to Betty Shine. I mean, it literally pushed you into her.
Yeah.
Right? So people like the rest of us, let's just say, it's going to be difficult for people to, all right, pull the plug. I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to quit my job at the hospital as an ER doctor. I'm just going to walk away and I'm going to wait for the clues and I'm going to see what happens. And I am willing to bet that if they were to do that, things would happen. They would have what I call the crooked path. You know, one of my favorite sayings is a straight line is the quickest way to the wrong place. And therefore, our real life, the discovery of this real self, would involve a bunch of zigzags. But, you know, that's not how the system works. The system says, no. If you go to this college, you'll get into this PhD program or law school, and then you become this professional and you'll make lots of money and you'll do good things for other people because you'll have skills and be trained, highly trained, credentialed. That's what they call it. So it's a big leap for people to just jump into the black pool, jump into the, dark abyss and hope for the best. And as I said just a minute ago, I believe the best will happen. And for many of us, the doors have closed as they did with you. But there are those who aren't going to be willing to unplug from the system just on the bet that they could enlarge and redefine themselves and live a much more meaningful life by giving all this up.
Well, I don't think they have to. You see, for me, one of the most powerful energies of transformation is intent. Now, when you come into the world as I did, clearly, I mean, in those early days, these messages that were giving me all this information and telling me where I was going to go, and I was going, what? Included the fact that it was all in the words that we used, it was all arranged and organized a long time ago. And therefore that I had come to do this. And therefore, this is why this was happening. It wasn't random. And my role was to go with it. And because something inside me, I mean, the moment it happened, it was all so bizarre, but something inside me was going, go for it, yes, go for it, go for it, go for it. I got the chance to get other jobs in the media when the BBC let my contract go, and I turned them down, even though I had no form of income. I was living off savings. I did for a long time. And I wasn't looking anymore for anything else. Something said to me, "Go for this. This is right." So at some level of me, I had the intent to do this, but if people at the moment have not had experiences like that, it doesn't mean they have to just give up their job and walk away. Because but maybe that is, if their intuition tells them to do that, then they should go with that intuition, because that might be their job, their journey. But people don't have to do that. I would suggest this: what they need to do, people that want to go on this process of awakening and what comes from it, is to put out the intent. And what by intent, I don't mean, oh, I'd like to, if there's an R in the month, but I mean intent that really means it. I want to do this, and I will do what is necessary to do this. You put that intent out, but it might not happen tomorrow, it might not happen next week, but eventually, and probably the way the energy is going at the moment, won't take too long. Suddenly, things are going to start changing in your life. Whether it's experiences, whether it's opportunities, whether it's people, whatever. And your life is going to start to change, because it's changing in line with your intent. Everything is energy. Everything. In this reality, everything is energy. And thus, an experience, a person, a location, a job is in its prime form an energetic information field. Now, when you put out the intent that you want to go through this process of transformation and deprogramming, there is a frequency change that takes place. That intent starts to broadcast a frequency, and that frequency will sync with and draw to it through something I call vibrational magnetism. A kind of form of electromagnetics in the reality we're experiencing. And it will lock into those fields, and it will draw them to us. And in the manifest world, where we turn those fields into holographic, apparently physical expressions, people come into our lives, as they did with me. Information, opportunities come into your life. And they start to pull you and draw you and lead you into a certain direction. And so it's not about just dropping everything and walking away and sitting in a room and saying, okay, I'm going to wait for something to happen. You don't have to do that. Once that intent goes out, you can carry on what you're doing for a while, and then you start to watch things change. Not if the intent's not genuine. And that's another point. As with me, so with everyone, when you put out that intent and this synchronization of intent with information fields that connect to that intent start to come towards you, then we'll see what your intent really is. Because often, people think, I'm going to be spiritual now. I'm going all spiritual. And so what's going to happen is everything's going to be lovely, and I'm going to walk along leafy lanes, and butterflies are going to drop on my shoulder, and it's going to be lovely now because I'm spiritual. And what normally happens, and of course massively it happened in my life, is all hell breaks loose. Your life in your experience often seems to start to fall apart. And people then start to panic, and they say, oh my God, what's happening? What's happening to my life? I thought I was going spiritual. My life's falling apart. And you say to them, well, that's the life you didn't want, isn't it? And they say, well, yeah, well, that's why it's fallen apart. And there's this transition period where the old life starts to fall apart, because the old vibration, the old frequency that you're giving out from your previous pre-intent self, that was drawing in people, places, locations, ways of life as a result of that, now that is falling apart because you're no longer syncing with it. And relationships might break up. They might not if the other person's going the same way as you. Locations may change, jobs may change, opportunities may change, and it's important at that stage to stick with it, because what will eventually happen is the manifestations of the intent will come in to replace what is falling apart. And that's what happened to me massively. And the thing is just to keep walking, keep sticking with it, because it will work out. And a lot of people, they go through that initial stage where their life starts to fall apart and they don't like it, and because they're losing their sense of security, which is part of phantom self, that is the need for security and predictability of life. And they say, no, I'm not going. Oh, if this is spirituality, you can stick it. I'm not having it. I don't want this. And they go back to their old life. But if you stick with it, your life is transformed. And like I say, you don't have to say, oh, I'm going to give up my job and walk away. You just have to put out the intent and then go with it, and it will naturally unfold. And because of what I call the truth vibrations, in the time we're in now, it will unfold. I think a lot more quickly and a lot more smoothly than it would have done at one point, before this vibrational change started to kick in.
Well, David, that's very helpful. I really mean that. And I know how scared so many people are. They're stuck in a matrix job, which means they have matrix people around them. They have a bunch of phantom selves operating right alongside them, and it's driving them crazy, but they believe they need a paycheck and they wouldn't be able to do much if they didn't have that influx of, fiat money, digits rolling into their bank account that keep them alive. This is the perception. So yeah, I think you have to put the intent out, and then you're going to have that intent tested, because that's what these energetic forces that loom over us are interested in. Do you mean this or not? And so it will be the beginning of a journey, and you have to be adventurous and committed in every way, from the depths of you to that journey, if you're going to succeed in it. And you haven't been through easy times. I know that. I mean, between the ridicule and the physical, the arthritis, there's been lots and lots and lots of tests for you, and experience of tests and pain and hardship. That's part of being human, I think. And we've got to show that we can meet them, and then we can reach for the best of what's in us to transform them into another leg of the path,
Yeah, and we can perceive them from a human level as tests and challenges, but I think from an energetic level, it's all about frequency and energetic connection. Because if you put out an intent, and that intent starts to draw to you what you need to achieve that intent, which is for the old life to fall apart, so the new transformed life can come in. Then, if you don't go with the intent, it's not really, I think, energetically that you're being tested to see if you will. It's purely energetic physics in a way, that if you don't go with that intent, then you disconnect yourself from the intent, and the intent energy stops bringing to you what you need to achieve the intent, and everything's the energy. You go back to the same energetic state, and it's the same with challenges. We can experience them as challenges, we can experience them as tests, or we can see, hold on a second, there's some energetic layer of me which is blocking me moving forward or expanding as I need to. Thus, I need to address that energetic block, and we will experience the holographic expression of that block by some kind of experience, and we'll experience the block breaking as some kind of physical experience, or what we think is physical, and therefore we'll experience on that level. But what we're actually doing is just removing energetic fields, energetic information and perception fields that are stopping us expanding into greater levels of awareness. So there's two ways of looking at it. Neither are wrong. I mean, one's an expression and one's with the source. But if in the end, what it's all doing is unpicking the program and unpicking, and of course, because of the passing on through what we call procreation of fields of perception, because the body's just information fields, and in that will be fields of perception which have come from that genetic line's energetic frequency field line of experience, and thus many of the things on a biological computer body level that are the blocks we need to remove are actually blocks that have nothing to do with this, even this particular experience. They're blocks that are in there. There's almost like a cleansing of levels that are actually nothing directly to do with us. Because my feeling is, this is another whole area, but that when we hear these stories, these endless stories from native cultures around the world, and even in religions like Islam and Christianity in the Old Testament, of collectively interbreeding between a non-human force and humans, or the gods and humans, I think part of that so-called interbreeding, I think it was much more high-tech than we led to believe, was downloading emotional and perception fields into the body computer, which we're dealing with, a bit like a virus, if you like. And so we're dealing with that as well. But consciousness is so powerful, and the program so weak in the face of consciousness in its power, that we can overcome anything. But we can't overcome it in phantom self, because phantom self, by its very nature, its very self-identity, is being overwhelmed in its perception of everything by and by this this manipulated sense of reality that is running through the body computer.
So, David, as you were talking, I was getting the picture mentally of a sculptor who has a big block of something, and he's got something in mind to make from it. Let's say he's going to sculpt a human face, the head of somebody. It could be imaginary, it could be Thomas Jefferson or someone, one of the greats. So we're all like that. We're all boxes in this phantom self, and we're very similar because we, as you said, it's repetition, repetition. We all think, the sky is blue, the clouds are real, and we know they're not, those of us who've awakened. But so the first few dislodgings of material, which would be the phantom self, have to be big chunks falling off. The sculptor hacks off big pieces because he has to get that head form out. And then each successively he has to carve and whittle, and eventually you're going to see this identity coming out that was in that block, right? So that's what I was thinking of, that we have to be willing to say, as our life is falling apart, wow, this was a big chunk being taken off. Now, oh gosh, there's another big chunk. Now there's this other piece from the back of my head. What's going to be the back of my neck,
Well, the biggest chunk for me, the biggest chunk drops off right at the start. And then you start, if you like, using your analogy, you then start uncovering the detail. But the big chunk right at the start is one simple realization. The world is not like I thought it was. Now, this might come from just one subject area, where suddenly you start to realize that something that you thought about just anything, one particular thing, was totally wrong. And then the next question is, so what on earth else is not true that I've always believed? What else is not true that I've been told and we're being told is true? That's the biggest chunk, because that's what breaks. Oh, we're mixing our metaphors here, but that's what initially burst the bubble. Because from that point, you can then you then have an open mind to allow any possibility in, because you realize, well, hold on a second. If this is not true and nothing like true, then my goodness, what else is not true? And your mind starts to open. And as your mind opens, what's actually happening is the program is opening. The program is being breached. This is why in some of my books I use, I know it's only words, but I relate the nature of mind as different to what I call consciousness. They're all the same, but they're in completely different states of being. I use the analogy of consciousness being the free flowing, free ocean, and mind being a block of ice. It's still water, but it's in a different state. And mind is, to me, is very accurately symbolized in Phantom Self mode as a block of ice compared with the infinite ocean, flowing ocean of consciousness. Once that realization is absorbed and encompassed, that actually, hold on a second, I'm going to look at everything again, because what else is not true that I've always thought was true? That block of ice starts to melt, because its rigidity, its state of frozen solidity, if you like, comes from a frozen solidity of perception, a refusal to move out of a frozen perception solidity from the program you've downloaded and accepted as reality. And people will recognize that if they've met a lot of mainstream scientists, a lot of mainstream doctors, a lot of mainstream journalists, mainstream politicians. They will see, symbolically, they will see that block of ice that they use as a mind. And what the awakening is doing is it's unfreezing. It's unfreezing. It's unsolidifying by letting the flow of possibility free to go where it wants to go, and go where it can take us. And that's the big breach, I think, happens at the start when you go through that initial, okay, I'm looking at the world differently now, and I'm open to anything, because what I've just learned about what's not true is crazy. And then you start getting the chisel out, and then you can start knocking off the detail. But that initial breakthrough, I think, is where the biggest chunks of the program fall.
Yeah, that's very well said. The analogy of the frozen ice being the rigidity of mind, and then the awareness being the flowing water. So I want to ask you this question. In your book and in a couple of recent interviews that I've heard of yours, you say that all there is really is infinite love. So I want you, if you can you explain what infinite love is?
Yeah, it's difficult, because the word love has been so misrepresented. We have infinite love, and then we have what I call mind love, which is basically attraction. And the nearest thing to infinite love that we have in this world is friendship. So many relationships that are based on attraction are what I call mind love. And therefore, when the initial attraction starts to fade, there's nothing left. Whereas friendship goes on forever. A friend might not like everything you do, but they'll always be there for you. And so that in many ways is unconditional love. And because we have so ruined the meaning of the word love, we have to put things like unconditional and infinite in front of it. And I years and years ago now, met someone who'd been in government mind control programs. And he told me that he could have made anyone fall in love with anyone else by stimulating chemicals in the brain, and that he'd done it. He can make people who otherwise would be completely not attracted to each other, even repelled, he could make them fall in love with each other in mind love by stimulating these particular chemicals. Infinite love is beyond that. And infinite love for me is infinite awareness in awareness of itself. You know, we're all infinite awareness because that's all there is. But we're not all infinitely aware. You know, like George Bush, I rest my case. So we therefore are not in a state of phantom self, for instance. We are not infinite awareness in awareness of itself. We are infinite awareness in awareness of a fraction of itself, which I call phantom self. Infinite awareness, which I would say also equate to infinite love, infinite balance, infinite possibility, is that state of awareness that's in awareness of its infinite, that it is infinite awareness. And when I had an ayahuasca experience some years ago, 2003, in the Brazilian rainforest, the only one I've had two over 2 nights. I on the second night, went into an altered state for 5 hours and was taken by this very powerful female voice and very funny female voice. I mean, I laughed so much that night. I was in agony because this voice took me on a journey to show me the illusory nature of reality, how all the things that we thought were physical and everything we thought was real was actually just an illusion, a decoded illusion, a illusion of perception. When it started out, and I started to go into an altered state, this female voice came in, and it said, the first words it said was, "We're going to take you to where you come from and to where you will return." In the greater picture, of course, it's where we all already are, but are not in awareness of it. And the next thing the voice said was, "All you really need to know is infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion." And in this journey of hours, I was taken through this explanation of the illusory nature of reality, and I was taken to this, quote, place. And it was a place beyond frequency, because it was beyond vibration, it was beyond movement. It was the silent, still, all that is, has been, and ever can be. And when you hear things like that, most people say that's ridiculous. How can anything be, is, and has been, and anything can be? Well, very simply, there's one thing that can be all of that, and that's all possibility. And this state, I say place, this state which manifested as a place, had such extraordinary levels of pure, unconditional love, bliss, all-knowingness. It was beyond description. And I was told that from this point of silent, still, all possibility, everything became manifest, or could be made manifest. And I have read since people who've had near-death experiences who have described the same experience, and one gave it the the name, the dazzling darkness, which is a terrific description because as I was experiencing this still, silent, incredibly beyond description, loving or knowingness in this experience, it was black, but it was alive with light. And it's impossible without experiencing it to describe what seems to be a contradiction but isn't. And I was interested to see these other people in near-death experiences who would experience that same thing. The dazzling darkness is a wonderful description. That is the true self. That is infinite awareness in awareness of itself. And everything in the world of form, in the world of manifestation, is an expression of that, most of which is not in the world of form, in awareness of that is what it is. And phantom self, of course, is massively disconnected from that level of awareness. It's that state of unconditional love. You know, it's like the parable of the prodigal son. One son stays at home and looks after his father and does all the things his father would like, in effect, and the other son goes away and goes through experiences and challenges and comes back, and the father loves the son who went away as much as the son who stayed. That's the kind of feeling that you got, because as I interacted with this dazzling darkness, so much I just knew without being told, without this voice saying, well, A, B, C, D, I just knew, because there was an interaction with it and a communication with it that was beyond anything that was to do with voice, even to do with telepathy. It was beyond that. It was just tapping into a knowingness. And so no matter, and this is the bottom line, no matter what happens to us in these experiences, no matter what we do and how we dislike ourselves and wish we'd have done something else, instead of seeing it as just an experience, taking what it gives you and moving on, however, quote, bad we are, however, quote, unsuccessful we are by other people's version of success, no matter what's happening in our lives now, we are infinite awareness having an experience. When the experience is over, we are infinite awareness having another experience. When we, quote, die, we are infinite awareness moving to another reality of experience. And no matter what we do, the love of the infinite is totally and utterly guaranteed, because we are all an expression of that. And in so many ways, the dazzling darkness is itself evolving knowledge and awareness from its expressions having experience. It's absorbing all these experiences and moving itself, because nothing remains the same. And so it's a long way from I am Ethel working in the store, I have no power, which is where the system wants us, to these levels of true self. And no matter whether you're Ethel in the store or President of the United States, you're still an expression of the infinite. No matter if you are some entity that's so lost, so disconnected from this dazzling darkness that it enters the realms of psychopathic behavior, it's still infinite love. Whenever it chooses to reconnect with it, it's always there, because it's what it is. beyond the programmed perceptions, thus the psychopathic behavior. So, there's so many ways of looking at this. There's so many angles from which to see it. And you can see it from 9/11 was an inside job. And we need to understand those things. But if we only focus on those things, you'll never find answers. The answers are far more, totally, in the end, with the dazzling darkness and connection with it, than it is stockpiling weapons to fight the enemy in a fake war, in a fake reality, as we play around a fake illusion of what life really is.
David, that was very, very profound. What I'm getting from this is what you're saying in your interpretation, because that's what it is that each of us, each thing around us, animals, all that, we're an expression of this infinite love, and we are it, and it is us. And so no matter how, hopeless we might feel about, for instance, unplugging from the matrix and walking the new path and chipping away the phantom self to reveal the real self, we are that infinite dazzling darkness, and it is interested in us, you could say. It speaks to us through little nudges and clues, as you once called it earlier in this show. And so if we could recognize that we're it and it is us and we're joined to it, and you could even say perhaps it cares about us, then through that bond we can wake up more confidently, maybe.
Well, you have infinite awareness and awareness of itself, all possibility, all knowing. All that is, has been, and ever can be. And that is what we are at our core. And our choice is to deprogram the layers that stop us accessing that, or to let those programs go so we become that. This is the point. It's like, this game that kids play at parties called Pass the Parcel. In the parcel is the prize, and if we symbolize the prize as the dazzling darkness, the parcel goes round and round and round, and every time the music stops, a layer of the parcel is taken off, and as the layer is taken off, it gets smaller and smaller, and that's symbolic of all these programs of that give us a perception of complexity, which is there to hide the simple nature of everything. This box gets smaller and smaller as the layers come off, and the more layers come off, the more wrappings come off, the closer you get to the prize. And eventually, of course, the last wrapping comes off and you have the prize. And this is so symbolic of the process that we need to go through if we want the prize, if we want to become an expression in form of the dazzling darkness. And the closer we get to it, the more expansively we see reality, the more power we have through that expansiveness to change reality, and the more this world of control, of limitation, of I can't and little me is transformed, not through fighting, not through stockpiling, not through attacking the enemy, but through demanifesting the, quote, enemy, by manifesting a world that, in the same way of the process we talked about earlier of intent, there is a collective version of everything as there is a single version of everything, and they are expressions of each other. What humanity, I would suggest, is going through now is a collective version of the intent transformation. And it may not seem like that on the surface, but it often doesn't seem like that when an individual is going through it at the start. But as people awaken and change their perceptions and change their intent, so collectively that process of breaking down the old collective self, so the new one, the collective reality, so the new one can emerge, we are going through that now. And what appears to be so nightmarish, and is in the experiencing for so many people, not least in places like Syria, Libya, and all these other targets, what we're actually seeing, I would suggest, is the breakdown of the old order. And that which is behind the old order has been able to manifest that order by manipulating the perceptions of humanity en masse, which through that collective perception of reality has manifested the experienced reality that we have called the world. This force that is behind the control is not itself manifesting anything. It doesn't have the power to. It is manipulating collective perception so the target population manifest that collective reality that suits the force. This is why it has to control information. From information comes perception. This is why it has to control experience by putting world events in place that manifest with information a sense of perception, which manifests itself then as an experienced reality. As this awakening goes on and expands, so we will see that, if you like, intent. First of all, we're seeing it now start to break down the old order. And not through fighting it, but through demanifesting it, through lack of connection with it. And we will see the collective expression of expanded awareness begin to manifest a different world. That's the level where this transformation is going on. The level of the projector, not the level of the screen.
Very nice, David. I'm counting on this, and I hope other people will too, and they'll put their own energy into it to make it catapult forward as effectively as possible. So yeah, this is the kind of discussion I wanted to have with you, that I think will be helpful to people, because I don't want people listening or out there to feel like you're something different from them and you've had these experiences because you're David Icke and, I wasn't targeted by psychic forces and such didn't happen to me, and I wasn't a world or a nationally known BBC reporter when I started. So, people perceive each other to be cut from different cloths and given special privileges, certain of us, but I think that you've chewed nuts and bolts of surviving, making your way through this. From what I'm understanding, that this has not been a picnic, and this is your path, and you're doing it in a great way, and you're expressing it so that other people can understand and start playing this knowledge into their own tape, you could say. So it's great. I'm very grateful to you for giving me this time, and I know I'm going to get lots of feedback on this show. Some people, they think that, well, we can't believe what David Icke says. And you've heard that before, right? But I think that what you've explained today is very helpful. And I urge people to get the book Phantom Self. And if it's your first book by David, it's a wonderful book, wonderful place to start. Because I can't even read this book quickly. I have to read a page or even less than a page, and then I have to put it down, and I have to think, and I have to go for a walk, and I have to absorb, and I have to integrate what this is really saying. And there's so much in this book. I mean, it is not a short book. It weighs a ton. It's 435 pages by the time you get to the bibliography. So this book could last you a good couple of years if you want to read it at that speed, and I probably will. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Sofia. Yeah, I am Infinite Awareness, having an experience called David Icke. And everyone listening to this is Infinite Awareness having an experience called whatever they call themselves. So all we're having is different experiences. This idea of hierarchy, which kind of pervades everything. We have so-called spiritual hierarchies in New Age belief. We have religious hierarchies. We have political hierarchies. And there was a song by a singer in Britain years ago when I was a kid, which went, walk tall, walk straight and look the world right in the eye. That's what my mama told me when I was about knee high. She said, son, be a proud man and hold your head up high. Walk tall, walk straight and look the world right in the eye. And we need to look the world in the eye. And we need to stop cricking our neck, looking down or looking up, because we're all expressions of the same infinite awareness having different experiences. And we've been divided so that infinite awareness goes to war with itself. We change that, we reverse that, and this conspiracy is all over, and the world will be a very, very different experience. So no hierarchies, no holier than thou, no cross-legged on a mountain, I'm above you, and no, I'm down here, so you're above me either. Look the world in the eye, and the world will look you back in the same way. Look up as inferior, and you will manifest from life experiences that confirm your sense of the inferior. Very, very important. No one's better than you on the level of infinite awareness. No one is worse than you on the level of infinite awareness. So this is not a time to look up at others or look down at others, but to look the world, to look what we're facing in the eye. And what we're facing will be the first one to blink, I assure you.
Excellent. That's excellent. Thank you so much. So I will say goodbye to you, David, for today, and hopefully sometime in the future when the world gets closer to becoming better and better, which it is, I shouldn't say when, you can come back and you can tell us more, okay?
Well, we're still in the transition period, so it's going to be a bumpy ride, but on the other side, we'll see that it was a ride worth taking. And thanks very much for this chat, Sofia. I've really, really enjoyed it. It was really great. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Hi, this is Sofia, encouraging you to visit my online store, avatarproducts.com, where you will find a wonderful thing called magnesium cream. Magnesium is a mineral we desperately need due to the fact that it alkalinizes our blood and, another bonus, it relaxes muscles. So all you athletes or computer addicts with workout soreness or stiff necks, use a little magnesium cream on a regular basis and feel the kinks getting looser. Magnesium is the dominant ion in the cell and facilitates hundreds of biochemical exchanges. Using it transdermally through the skin means you can put it right on those chronic pain spots and it still gets absorbed to work systemically. A 3-ounce tube is easy to carry around and a great gift for aging parents, introducing them to natural chemistry for rapid pain relief for arthritis and joints, and great overall cellular support. It's at avatarproducts.com in the Sun and Skin section.